I'm San, and you're listening to San's podcast. I moved to the UK in September 2023, and it's now May 2024. It's been a relatively short time, only about half a year, but I've experienced so much, truly so much. And it's made me love my country even more, made me even prouder of it. A quote from Uncle Ho that I believe should always reside in our hearts is, "Whether the rivers and mountains of Vietnam can become beautiful, whether the Vietnamese people can step onto the glorious stage to stand shoulder to shoulder with the powerful nations of the 5 continents, depends largely on your efforts in studying." These are the words of President Ho Chi Minh, excerpted from his letter to students on September 15, 1945. These days, especially having just passed the anniversaries of April 30th and May 1st, many images related to Vietnamese history stir so many emotions within me. And I believe that every Vietnamese person has an intense patriotism, a love and sense of protectiveness for one another. I see this even more clearly when I go abroad. When I talk to international friends, almost everyone knows about the war in Vietnam. They also show considerable respect when Vietnam is mentioned. And San thinks that if we are children of Vietnam, we absolutely must know Vietnam's history. Our people must know our history. And to all of you listening to this podcast, I truly hope you'll read and learn more about the history of Vietnam, about the hardships our country has overcome. Vietnam has only had a very, very short time to develop, because we were embargoed until 1995. It was an incredibly, incredibly difficult country. Imagine if this were our family, a small family. It means the people around us wouldn't trade with us, they'd shun us, they'd embargo us. And this is truly an unbelievable journey when you talk about Vietnam. In July 1995, the US and Vietnam announced the decision to normalize diplomatic relations between the two countries. And now it's 2024, only about 30 years later. So, we've only had a few decades to develop. And now, our country is one of those experiencing very strong growth, and it's not just economic. It's about our internal strength, our foreign relations, even though there are still quite a few obstacles, and we still face many difficulties, both external and internal. From 2023 to 2024, you can see countless visits from global powers. When I went to study abroad, it seemed like stories related to my country were brought up more often. And honestly, I still feel that living in my country is wonderful, very comfortable. People always think living in the West must be great, much better than back home, right? But in Vietnam, there's just something so dear, so emotionally rich, it's hard to explain. Regarding infrastructure, of course, Vietnam cannot compare to countries that have been wealthy for centuries, building the most modern things. Our country also cannot offer salaries as high as here, because generally their currency is many tens of times stronger than ours. But in return, the cost of daily living, the cost of everything, generally, I find that people here don't live that comfortably either. Rent is incredibly expensive, eating out is very expensive, medical services, or anything related to repairs are all very costly. If you say healthcare is free, you have to book appointments a year in advance. And if you want immediate service, instant healthcare, it's incredibly expensive. Nothing is cheap. Imagine people who don't have a stable job here, it must be incredibly tough for them. Actually, I went abroad to observe, to see what they have that we don't, and what we have that they don't. The one thing foreigners can't compare to Vietnam is the care and love for one another, that spirit of kinship. Although face-to-face they are very polite, they know how to speak and are still very considerate. However, for example, in Vietnam, strangers can help very selflessly, right? But here, it's everyone for themselves, they don't care. Their individualism is very high, and it stems from being dominated by capitalism. In this second semester, I'm taking a critical thinking course, and one of our topics is neoliberalism, which is essentially a part of capitalism. And learning about it made me understand more why capitalist countries like this are rich, but they don't really have much emotional warmth, honestly. It's almost every man for himself. Of course, I'm not saying they completely lack humanity, they definitely have feelings. But to have the same friendliness and love as in my country, that's very rare. Capitalism emphasizes individual value, an individualistic approach, and an open economic market, meaning less government intervention. Here, whoever has the ability to get rich gets rich. Generally, they focus on, if you have the ability, you get rich. If not, tough luck. However, it doesn't account for the fact that some people are born rich, and they will always have more options than others. San clearly observes that in capitalist countries, it always benefits the bourgeoisie, the wealthy class. Once they're rich, they stay rich forever. So, if you say human rights or fairness are higher in capitalist countries, San isn't sure. Really, I'm not sure. Here, if you're born into a non-wealthy family and study hard, you might still get an okay job. But to go from having nothing, being completely penniless, to becoming extremely rich, that's quite difficult. In Vietnam, this opportunity is greater because doing business is easier for us. It's easier because we have so many opportunities to develop. Whereas here, most businesses are very large corporations, and if you want to start a startup, for example, it has to be something extremely special. Even my professor, someone who has researched capitalism and their country's culture and history very thoroughly, he also said that in my assignment, in this course's final essay, I should focus on critiquing capitalism. This means that he himself also leans more towards socialism based on his research, and he explicitly stated it. Because I asked him what he thought, having researched so much, which one he felt was better. He said that capitalism benefits the rich, while socialism is a place where there's more equality, and everyone has more opportunities to develop. But here, it seems the opportunity to get rich is only for the rich. For example, my professor also said that he's a professor who teaches, but his salary is just enough, moderate. Getting rich is impossible. I asked if he thought he would ever live in countries like Vietnam someday. He said perhaps. He's still young and wants to experience things, but currently he has a long history of research here, and he enjoys research and has a specific research job here. So, he will continue to live here for now, but in the future, he wants to experience more places. And I also want to meet him again to talk more about this topic, because I find it very fascinating, you know. Of course, to delve deeper into capitalism or socialism would definitely require another podcast episode and more research. But first and foremost, these are my thoughts. If people think socialism is unfair, then we should rethink that a bit. The most diligent students in class are Asians, Chinese, Vietnamese. They are among the most hardworking students. And even when I talk to the teachers, they also share this observation about students from Asia. And specifically, San herself has observed that any Vietnamese person who comes here to study abroad is very hardworking. Most of them are. Even though these students come from well-off families, they still strive to find extra work, doing part-time jobs while studying. They are so capable, so diligent, so admirable. After more than 6 months here, I've found things I really like and things I don't. And I think it's the same everywhere. Even in Vietnam, there are things I like and things I don't. What I don't like about Vietnam is traffic jams, dust, and the year-round intense sun. But in the UK, there are also very annoying things like their food. I'm not talking about home-cooked meals, and fancy restaurant food is fine, but those quick meals you grab when you don't have time to cook, like sandwiches. They're just terrible, absolutely awful. Out on the streets, people wear headphones more than masks. In Vietnam, we wear masks, but here, people wear headphones, you know. It's like my own world, don't bother me, don't bother each other. That's the feeling. And for me, as a Vietnamese person, when I came here, I sometimes wondered, am I being too friendly? I often ask myself that, because our people are very cheerful, kind, and open-hearted. However, sometimes, when being so cheerful and friendly with everyone around, it feels like I might be too *friendly. So I have to moderate it, you know. That level of friendliness is reserved for other Vietnamese people I meet. Like when we meet, we hug, link arms, greet each other warmly. But with many other people, especially the British here, generally you have to keep a bit of distance, be a bit reserved. Because they are quite wary of my friendliness, they seem afraid I might do something to them, you know, while our people are actually just simple and straightforward. Of course, I've also met some people who are on the same wavelength. For example, my flatmate is from Belarus. Belarus is a country near Russia and quite similar to ours, so they are also friendly. Even though she was a bit cold when we first met over time, San's friendliness and charm melted her. So now, whenever we meet in the kitchen, we always hug, you know. Hug to greet each other, to share love, to show affection. San really likes that too. And I think that actually, if people here interact more with Vietnamese people, they'll eventually be assimilated by us. They'll be assimilated by our love, our affection, and our friendliness. Because generally, Sand feels that deep down, everyone wants to be loved. Everyone wants to be loved. It's just that they might be used to their living environment, they've gotten used to it. Sometimes they feel, oh, I like this independence, or I prefer it when others don't pry too much. But deep down, for everyone, being cared for, loved, and shared with is still something wonderful. Oh, and some of my friends also